Happy Friday, everybody. All right. Today for this particular lesson, it's honestly more like economics 101. You're going to kind of be sitting here going, wow, I feel like I'm really not in a world history class. I'm more in an economics class. But that's okay. Obviously, tons of history is a breakdown of the political, cultural, and economic mechanisms of kingdoms and nations and people. And economics is a huge part of social sciences. And when you're looking at the age of exploration and what that does to the world, it completely changes the economics of it. And so it's important to understand. If you have kind of any questions about what we go over today, please, as always, don't hesitate to email me or make a comment, of course, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. We are not going to complete lesson 2 today. Lesson 2 is kind of almost broke down into, all right, looking at the economic portion of it and then looking at the slave trade, because the slave trade is an economic portion of this unit. But I break that down into two separate lessons. Next week, on Monday, we will be doing the slave trade, and on Tuesday, we will actually be doing an activity over the slave trade in person, and you online students will also be doing it. It's definitely one I don't want anyone to miss out on, but you want to put your emotional hard hats on. I can tell you that much. But here we go. So I said yesterday, Unit 7 is one of these units of emotional extremes. On the one side of the coin, if you're looking at it from a very Eurocentric standpoint, the age of exploration and what all it brings to the table for Europe is amazing. I mean, it enhances their wealth, it enhances their standards of living, it paves the way for entire new industries to form. For the very first time in Europe, the middle class really kind of sees a boost and starts to grow, more so than just kind of this little tiny group of people. And again, it paves the way really for even the Enlightenment to emerge, and so the scientific revolution. And so it's again, on one side of the coin, this is again this kind of bright moment in history. On the flip side of that coin, of course, it is one of the darkest moments in history. Again, especially for the indigenous people of the Americas, who just get wiped out by huge percentages due to European diseases. And then, of course, this paves the way for the slave trade to emerge to try to offset the deficit of human labor due to the amount of deaths of the indigenous. So it just, again, it is a unit of extremes. And today, when we are talking about, the economic impact, this is the positive side of the coin, for Europe, and kind of looking at, how does this affect the world globally? And so today is kind of more of the positive side of it. All right, so due to the age of exploration, you have what becomes known as the commercial revolution. So clearly, if you discover this entire new continental chain and all that it has to offer resource-wise, you are going to see a brand new commercial movement. So the commercial being, of course, the selling and trading and movement of goods and services. So, as it says, the rapid expansion of these European economies and trading empires just is really quite amazing to study. So the colonies, of course, are all about, we need to exploit what we can out of them to make money, back for the mother country. And again, like expand our power on the global market that now exists. So the flow of wealth, as it says, coming into these kingdoms is massive. And so you have new kinds of banking, new kinds of accounting, and financial institutions. Insurance companies spring up really kind of for the first time. If you think about it, these merchant companies, these shipping companies, we can equate them to trucking companies today. 18 wheelers going down up and down I-35, I-20, I-40. That they are how we get our products, right? There's even like airplane shipping companies, international shipment companies. Well, I mean, okay, think about that in terms of ships, right? That's how it gets started, is this international global market. It's shipping. So if you want to be a merchant sailor and own a shipping company, and you go buy yourself 3 ships, well, what happens if they go down in a hurricane? Well, here come insurance companies, right? Pay us a premium. If this happens to you, if you've been paying into our company, if you've been paying a certain premium, then we can give you a percentage back of your loss. And so even insurance springs up due to the commercial revolution. So this new economic principle emerges known as mercantilism. And this is all about basically backing up your marketability and your trade value as a kingdom. You need to be able to back up all of your goods on the market with a massive amount of gold and silver. You can't just give face value to your dealings. You've got to back it up. And so, of course, the fastest route to getting large sums of wealth in terms of, kind of hoarding gold and silver to create a bigger trading power is exploiting the colonies, exploiting the new land, the new people, the new resources. And, that's no big shock. So, it's all about the mother country gaining large amounts of wealth, hoarding, honestly, large amounts of wealth to, again, back up their trading power on the global stage. Another thing, of course, this is Economics 101. You need to have a balance of trade. This is also highly important, even today, obviously, for any nation. You want to be exporting more than you are importing. And you also don't ever want to have to completely depend on imports. So you want to be selling more than you are buying is basically what that means, so that you don't end up in the hole or dependent upon other nations. Because, of course, if you are dependent upon the imports of other nations just for your basic goods and needs, that puts you in a pretty vulnerable position. They can say, you know what, you've made us mad. We're cutting off our goods that we usually send to you. Or you see this even today in modern politics. The United States has used it multiple times. You can put economic sanctions and trade sanctions on countries. All right, you've made us mad. You specifically import this product into your nation that we produce. Well, you've pissed us off. If you want it, we're either one, going to raise the taxes on it, and so that's going to hurt you financially, or if you've really made us mad, we're just going to cut you off, period, and we're not going to sell to you at all. And so this kind of thing all begins too during the commercial revolution. This idea of taxing imports, and exports in and out of nations, as making, of course, like an extra dollar on the demands of your products. I mean, this is supply and demand 101, right? Like if everybody wants this particular product and you're the one that makes it and sells it, well, then you can sell it at a premium, and you can also tax them for importing it into their nation and make even more money on your profit. So again, like a lot of this is just Economics 101. So again, you've got the principle of mercantilism. As you can see, the mother country's treasury right there, chocker block full, gold and silver. You want a favorable balance of trade. And then, of course, you want, from a European standpoint, to exploit those colonies with cheap labor and bring all of those raw materials out of the colonies and into the mother country, where then the raw materials are then refined into, a refined marketable product, because that's where your money is, right? Like, you don't go to a clothing store and ask for like a bundle of cotton. You go to a clothing store because you want the t-shirt, you want the jeans, and those are the refined products. Okay. And so that, but the colonies are creating, again, the raw materials. The mother country is then refining them. And again, that's where your money is. And it's also where the massive amounts of job opportunities and commercial growth really happens. Because you have to remember, of course, in the majority of all of the colonies, you essentially have slave labor taking place. The indigenous people are basically enslaved, initially by the Spanish, and then you have, with their populations decreasing immensely, again, the movement of slaves out of Africa to supplement the labor shortages in the New World. And so your labor, for the most part, is, the initial cost of the slaves, but after that, it's nothing. You own them. And so, your cost of labor, your overhead, a lot of times coming out of the colonies is not that high. And that's what they wanted. That's what I mean by like exploiting the people, exploiting the resources. But for the European side of things, when those raw materials get there, and again, they are now refining them into marketable products, this opens the door. Again, more job opportunities, more goods to purchase, improved standards of living. Because the governments, aka the kings, are getting so much wealth, a lot of them do put money back into the infrastructure of their kingdom. So improved and new roads, bridges, canals, and all of this, of course, increases and heightens trade. The better infrastructure you have, the better your trade is, the more money that your country is going to make as well. So, again, all of these things are positive on the European front. This is a really great graph that I want you to kind of hone in on, because if you're, maybe like you're not as much of an auditory learner and you're more of a visual learner, this should really help you out. So because of the age of exploration and the increased trade there in purple, this creates, of course, more workers, the need for more labor. It also creates, tons of more financial institutions to emerge, and for them to, of course, have so much more money flowing in and out, and not just in a local capacity, but in a global capacity. Merchants' wealth and power expand. Those merchants are your middle class. Again, for the first time in Europe, you're going to see a real, legitimate growth in that bourgeoisie, that middle class. Another hugely positive thing in Europe that the age of exploration and commercial revolution creates is peasants, for the very first time, have so many more opportunities to actually make a decent wage. Okay. Generations of these peasants have been serfs, and lived under this one particular lord's control and at their manor, and essentially have also kind of lived a slave-like existence. Now they're all leaving the country and moving into the city and going to work for these, refinement opportunities. All right, I'm going to take this raw material and I'm going to help this guy refine it and sell it, or I'm going to go hop on a ship and become a merchant sailor. I mean, there's all new things that now they can actually make money, and pull themselves out of that lifestyle a little bit. There's more money available just for entrepreneurship. With all of these new goods, well, I mean, people who are creative and entrepreneurial, you have all the opportunity now in the world to kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. This is also a lot of the reason why people in England, of course, left for the colonies, and France and Spain. They were leaving to go to the colonies because these are people that really didn't have as much opportunity in, this kind of static nobility-based economic hierarchy that for generations had dominated Europe. Well, they can kind of break free of that in the colonies and make something of themselves and maybe be a somebody, when back home they really would have never been anybody. So that's the big rush then to the colonies by Europeans. It's that opportunity. And then the bottom right green bubble, I want you to pay attention to, because this is a huge foreshadowing into Unit 8. It says merchants' taxes increase the king's power and wealth. So Unit 8 is about the absolute monarchs of Europe, who, of course, have absolute power during this time frame, and they are raking in the money. Just like today, we pay property taxes and sales taxes, and all of that goes towards the state and federal governments. Guys, everybody paid taxes back then too. I mean, like everything, like death and taxes, they're always around, right? So everybody was paying taxes back then as well. But of course, the government is this absolute monarch, this one king that holds all the chips. So, who were these kings? Who were these queens? What were they doing with this newfound wealth and power? And of course, some of the stories that come out of that are pretty interesting. We'll be looking at some interesting characters in the next unit. So just kind of keep that in the back of your brain. So obviously, again, the commercial revolution and the Columbian Exchange is the exchange of goods, of course, between the New World and the Old. And what was the goal? Gain wealth. How did they accomplish it? Increasing trade. And again, it was all about exploiting the new colonies. So exploitation in terms of mine gold and silver, because I mean, heck, you really, if you can do that, yay. But then also, the creation of plantations. So mass producing all of these new agricultural goods. As we all know, of course, here in the United States, cotton becomes king, tobacco becomes king, prior to that happening in the southern portion of the United States, you have it happening all in the Caribbean and in South America as well. And in addition to cotton and tobacco, you have sugarcane and vanilla and all kinds of other products. So this is a great map that just kind of shows you some of the things that were coming out of the new world to the old, and the old world to the new. Some of these things should really kind of surprise you. And today, a lot of my students have been kind of like, what? One of the things I really like to point out is how many of you can't think of Italian food without thinking of like tomatoes, like pizza, marinara sauce, spaghetti. I mean, all of this is tomato based. It is from the New World, ladies and gentlemen. Italy did not see the tomato until about 400 years ago. And now, of course, that particular, I don't know, everybody says it's a fruit, but I always want to say it's a vegetable. But, the tomato is like synonymous with Italian food now. We can't, but really, if you look back at truly authentic Italian food, prior to the Columbian Exchange, it's all olive oil based because the tomato didn't exist in Europe. Another vegetable that's always shocking is the potato. A lot of times you can't think of the potato without thinking of the Irish because of the very famous Irish potato famine. It is a New World crop. And ironically enough, a lot of the Europeans, when the potato first came, called it the devil's plant. And refused to plant it and refused to eat it because, of course, it grows in the ground. And so they believed, like any kind of root vegetable was like the devil's, must be the devil's work because it's growing underground. And how does that happen? And they get over that clearly pretty quickly. But yeah, originally potatoes were, oh God, they're the devil's food. But another thing that you got to think of is our Midwest. Our Midwest is nicknamed the breadbasket. Guys, we didn't have grains in the Americas. That was imported from Europe. We didn't have wheat and oats and barley over here. And I mean, again, now, like, you can't think of our Midwest without thinking about all of that kind of stuff. I can't think about California without thinking about wine, and grapes, of course, came from the old world to the new. Another thing that came from the old world to the new is coffee beans. And I don't even drink coffee, but I can't think about like good, solid coffee without thinking about South America. I mean, South America is like synonymous with amazing coffee, right? Brazil, Colombia. I mean, like some of your biggest named coffee comes out of South America, and that was brought into them. So, it's interesting, and I challenge you to kind of look at this and see like, whoa, this is all kind of crazy. I can't think of Native Americans without seeing them like riding across the plains on horseback. Horses weren't in America until the Europeans arrived. Neither were pigs, neither were cattle. I mean, it's hard to even think of Texas without thinking of horses and cattle. I kind of have a funny story about pigs. It was a Spanish explorer that landed in Florida, and I can't remember how many. I want to say he had like a dozen or so pigs on his ship, and he let them loose once he landed in Florida. And that's honestly where every single one of our pig breeds, it stems from like those pigs that were originally like let loose on the Florida peninsula by the Spanish explorer. So it's just kind of amazing. This is the bright side, right, to all of this is just how it changed the world, and how it built and changed people's cultures, and again, like, made the world smaller in a lot of ways. This was the first global marketplace. So, and that portion again is interesting and kind of fun to study and positive. So this is a crash course video on the Columbian Exchange. I would like you to please watch it. And then on Monday, again, we will start the slave trade. And as it says, the negative effects of colonization. But that is on Monday. So y'all have a wonderful weekend. Be safe out there, and I will see you then. Bye.